Please tell me your stories of finding new love after you thought it was impossible.
I lost my real first love. I felt like I was dying every day for 7 years, constantly thought about him, hoping he was well every single night. And I cried, because I missed him too. But I knew things were at an end, and I let him be. I deleted him from everything for my peace of mind. I thought I'd never feel like that again with somebody. I used to think about where it went wrong, trying to understand. I remember the words he used to seduce me and showering multiple times that day, scrubbing myself, and crying. I was a virgin till him. I started digging through my memories, trying to find the red flags or proof that I was being used. I couldn't see them for a long while, but then I did. I saw all the signs. Knowing that my love was one-sided tore me apart, and not being able to rid myself of the feelings for that person was heartbreaking and maddening. I was mostly mad at myself for falling for a loser and not seeing the signs. I also saw how I was the light in our relationship. I wanted to live life to the fullest, but he wanted to play video games all day. He was a depressed type and I was not. I was the joy in our relationship. I made that joy. He did not. I got him to live, put down the video games during the day, and made his life adventurous and fun. At some point he was happy. Seeing this made me see. I was the light in my own life and my happiness. He never was. I needed to do what made me happy and feel alive again. So I slowly let myself feel again, and it was painful. But I took him out of the equation and out of my head, stayed away from places we went. Moved away so I never had to drive in the area and be filled with memories. Best thing I ever did was move away. I pushed him out of my head because that painful feeling reminded me of my days with him. I kept allowing myself to feel, and at some point, I was able to get through it, and it felt normal to be me again. Eventually, I met someone, and I ended up loving them more than my real first love. That someone made me so very happy, happier than the guy who was my first love. He brought me peace, and I loved how I felt around him. I enjoyed sharing the things I love to do that bring me to life. He was gentle, caring, and passionate. He made me never guess. I had this feeling in my heart, and I was happy. I stopped thinking about my first real love. I was no longer hurting and yearning for that person. I just knew I found something better. So, to anyone listening to my story, be careful who you love. Make sure it's the right person who's deserving enough for it, because if not, they'll destroy your heart and you right down to the core.
What was the hardest time you've had to hold back tears? When I found out what Smurf Day was. When I was in college, everyone told me they were really jealous of me because of one of my teachers, but I didn't really get why. He was old and quiet and just seemed like a normal guy to me. I heard a few people call him Mr. Smurf, which really confused me. But eventually, one guy asked if I had seen Smurf Day yet. I had no idea what he was talking about and thought it was a joke. When I asked him what he meant, he just said, "You'll see." Apparently, this guy had a 3-year-old daughter, and a few years before, she was diagnosed with a rare brain disease. She was bedridden in the hospital, and after he was done teaching, he would go sit with her every night, and since The Smurfs was her favorite show, he'd always watch it with her. Apparently, it got worse, and she didn't have much longer, but since he was a single dad, he had to keep teaching to pay for everything. He'd come to class completely broken. However, eventually some students found out about this and started a GoFundMe for him. They raised over $15,000 so he could take time off work, and because of them, he got to spend her last few days with her. And since then, every year he shows up like this on her birthday. Have you ever gone above and beyond for a total stranger? I was in the middle of a date when I overheard someone telling a young girl she needs to leave. She was holding a bundle and had a very thin jacket on. It was freezing that day, so I figured she was just trying to stay warm. I watched through the window as she squatted down outside, and everybody just walked by her. She was broken, and I knew I couldn't just watch. I quickly finished my food and went to give her some money, but noticed she was sobbing. I went to ask if she needs any help, and noticed she wasn't just holding a blanket. She was holding a baby. I couldn't believe she was out in the cold and sat with her. I offered to join my boyfriend and I'd buy her some food. She instantly started smiling, but couldn't stop her tears. I told her to get whatever she wanted, and she couldn't stop thanking me. She was only 15 and didn't have anywhere to stay that night. She had ran away from home after she got pregnant and was so scared her parents would disown her that she stole $5,000 from them and ran away. It had been almost a year, and although she wanted to go home, she was certain she wasn't welcome. She hadn't even tried, so I asked her to call her mom on my phone. She dialed the number, and thankfully she answered. I told her who I was and what I was doing, and the woman didn't say anything until I heard her silently crying. That night, we spent 3 hours driving her home, and her family took her and their new grandson in.
What advice did you follow that everyone thought was stupid? My uncle told me, buy old muscle cars and fix them up for cheap. There's only so many left, and you'll get more car for your money than any new ride. When I was 22, I just landed my first decent job at a tech startup and got approved for a loan on a brand new luxury sedan. Everyone my age was driving German cars, showing off their success with monthly payments they could barely afford. But Uncle pulled me aside at a family barbecue. Uncle wasn't the type to talk much, but he always had some cool old car project going, so I figured he knew what he was talking about. I followed him over to his garage and watched him point at a beat-up muscle car covered in a tarp. He explained, that pile of rust cost me $2,000 in 1995. Sold it last month for $140,000. Your fancy new car will be worth half what you paid the moment you drive it off the lot. These old beauties only go up if you know what you're doing. That conversation stuck with me for weeks. I kept thinking about what Uncle said while I was looking at all these shiny new cars at the dealership. Finally, I called them up and canceled my loan approval. Instead of putting money down on a luxury sedan, I started hunting for old muscle cars I could actually afford to buy and fix up. Within 2 months, I'd bought 3 rusted-out classics from the late 60s. There was a Camaro that wouldn't start, a Corvette with a blown engine, and a Chevelle that looked like it had been sitting in a field for decades. My parents were mortified when neighbors started complaining about the junkyard in our driveway. My friends thought I'd lost my mind. Every time we hung out, they wouldn't shut up about their new rides. They'd show off their leather seats and touch screens while roasting my cars. One friend laughed and said I'd never get any girls driving rust buckets like that, only cougars who were into vintage stuff. Another kept saying I looked like I was collecting scrap metal, not chicks. They'd brag about their heated seats and backup cameras, then joke that the only feature my cars had was breaking down. I'll admit, there were moments pulling up next to their shiny BMWs that I wondered if Uncle was wrong. But then I'd remember that $140,000 sale, and I stayed determined to prove them all wrong. For 4 years, I spent nights and weekends in Uncle's garage learning how to fix these things. I picked up welding, engine work, paint, whatever I needed to know. Started hitting up car auctions to see what stuff was actually worth. My social life pretty much ended because they all thought I was too broke to hang out with them. So while my friends were posting pics of their fancy interiors and complaining about 1,400 monthly payments, I was covered in grease trying to get these rust buckets running. Slowly, I started recognizing patterns in what collectors wanted. The models I'd bought weren't just any old cars. They were the specific ones that were getting harder and harder to find in decent condition. My beat-up Camaro had the rare big block option. The Corvette had the split rear window. The Chevelle had the original factory papers that most people had lost or tried to fake over the years. And just as I predicted, the market suddenly exploded with people looking for their dream cars from their childhood. Auction prices went totally crazy. Classic car investment funds started buying up anything decent. The cars I'd bought for scrap prices were now selling for 6 figures at fancy auction houses. So I hopped on the hype and sold that first Camaro to a private collector for 30 times what I'd paid. I used the money to buy out more vintage cars, this time by the dozen. 2 years later, I sold 3 of those for enough to buy a small warehouse and start a proper restoration business. Now I own 26 classic muscle cars, with 12 more in various stages of restoration. My friends are still trapped in those luxury car loans they can't escape, with 2 of them having cars repossessed after getting laid off from work. Meanwhile, I've been getting calls from collectors willing to pay 10 times the amount of my friends' BMWs. Turns out, Uncle was spot on. There will always be newer, faster, shinier cars, but they aren't making any more of the classics.
Hey Reddit, what's a big dark secret you will never tell your kids? My mom told me about her grape when she was 17. I am grateful she did and that she trusted me enough to be honest with me. She told me because I was starting to get attention from men after developing young and she didn't want me to be in a vulnerable position. But when she told me she hadn't yet processed it and hadn't really come to terms with what happened, I was also too young and naive to really understand what it meant. As in standalone overshare, it may have been okay, but I was parentified young and both my parents told me way too much, too often, and too early. I'll tell my kids about my own assault one day to help protect them, but I'll make sure they're old enough and that I'm not using the opportunity to share as catharsis like my mom did. I will also never share the same level of detail that my mom did. They'll never be able to picture it like I did, and they'll never know his name. There's something really eerie about finding your mother's rapist on Facebook at age 13 and realizing he has a daughter your age.
I didn't know what a real hug felt like until I paid for one. I lost my parents in a car crash when I was 6. Since then, I've bounced from relative to foster home, never really belonging anywhere. No hugs, no affection, just existing in people's spare rooms. I've never had a serious relationship. I don't know how to connect. Every time someone gets close, I push them away without meaning to. A few nights ago, I had a dream where someone hugged me. Really hugged me. I woke up crying, so I hired a professional cuddler. I felt stupid doing it, but when she wrapped her arms around me, I broke. I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. She just held me and said, "You don't have to be sorry." No one's ever said that to me before. It was only an hour, but for once, I didn't feel like I was floating through life invisible. For once, I felt. We both pretended to be asleep when we got pulled over. Somehow, it worked. So last night around 2 a.m., my buddy Phil and I were driving back from 7-Eleven, high on Slurpees and bad decisions. He's driving, I'm riding shotgun, we're vibing to late-night radio. when suddenly, flashing lights, cops. Phil mutters, crap. Was I speeding? I'm like, a little, maybe a lot, possibly a felony. It's Virginia, and you know those traffic officers don't play about speeding violations. Instead of pulling out his license like a normal human, Phil just slouches in his seat and says, if I'm asleep, they can't ask me questions. Then this man closes his eyes and starts fake snoring, while still in the driver's seat, engine running, lights on. I panic. My survival instincts? Garbage. So I look at him, shrug and go, bet. I lean back, go limp, and join him in the world's dumbest synchronized nap. The cop walks up, flashlight blazing, taps on the window. Nothing. Taps again. Still nothing. Finally he yells, hello? And Phil, without opening his eyes, just groans like he's being woken up for school. Cop goes, are you both asleep? I crack one eye open and say, we're, sleep driving? The officer just stares at us for what feels like an hour and then says, get home safe, and maybe drink less Slurpee. He let us go. No ticket. No test. Nothing. Just two morons pretending REM sleep would protect us from the law. I've never laughed so hard and hated myself so much at the same time. It's safe to say I will not be driving with him again for a while.
I did it for wanting to break up with him for being a good dad. Me, 30 fee, and Kyle, 32 year, had been in what I thought was a good relationship for 3 years. He has children, and for privacy I won't say anything about his children. He does have an ex-wife around our age, and she's all right. We aren't friends, but we get along, and she trusted me enough to ask me to do things if they couldn't. We were going to move in together, but obviously not anymore. It was Father's Day that this happened. He spent his day with his kids, and I spent mine with my dad. Kyle texted me that he will always put his kids before me. Okay, totally unprompted. I was confused. My dad asked me if anything happened, and I'm like, not that. I know? It was weird, and I didn't reply because, yeah, I know. You should? I'm still confused. We talk about it like the next day, and he just said I needed to know. I'm like, yeah, but did I do anything? Did one of the kids say anything, like help me correct my behavior? Like, why did you say that when it's to be expected? I know he's a good dad that puts his kids first. It's why I wanted to have my own with him. He kept saying that I just need to know my place in his life. Need to know the hierarchy. It was really weird, and there's been no resolution. Now when I try to talk about that, he gets angry and says I'm being petty or jealous, and I always knew the deal. It feels weird to say it, but it almost felt hurtful. Like some type of passive-aggressive move, and he just wanted to start a fight or put me down. If I've never done anything and have been respectful, why say that? I know I don't come first in his life, and it never bothered me until he decided I needed to know that from his own mouth. I'm rethinking the relationship and just removing myself from it. Update is, I dumped him. I tried again for like the 100th time to talk to him. What prompted him to say that? What did I do? He just got angry and said I need to know my place, and why do I have a problem with it when I knew he was a dad going into this? Same old line he's been saying for the past week. I asked if he was cheating with his ex, and I got called insecure, petty, crazy, and others, but I remember those. I didn't even bother asking about hypothetical kids. I told him we're done, and he said he knew I couldn't handle it and to stay away from dads next time. I blocked him. Sent his ex a text letting her know, and she saw it, but no reply. Which is fine. She'll be blocked too if anything weird happens. I'm going to miss the kids, and that's the weirdest part. They're just gone. The graduations, birthdays, and other milestones gone. So yeah, no more dads for me. I can't say this was a learning experience. It just sucks.
ITE, if I don't tell my gay son about this part of my past. My son is 16, and he came out a few days ago. I reacted very badly. I cried and basically locked myself in my room for a day straight. But not because he is gay. I do not care about his homosexuality by itself. I love him so much, and I've always been very supportive of gay people, I think, even in the 90s when it was not as accepted as it is now. I never cared about it. I even had a gay brother who was 2 years younger than me. And my breakdown to my son's coming out happened because of what happened to him. He was gay. My favorite person in the world, my best friend, my confidant, a bit scrawny law, but he had a heart of gold. Genuinely the kindest person on earth. But some people decided him being gay was enough to hurt him. 3 guys attacking my baby brother because he looked at them weird. I was there. I tried to stop it, but I couldn't do anything except call the police, and only 1 guy got caught. And yet the police did nothing. This quote, that's what happens when the victim is a gay kid in Nebraska farmland, I guess. Anyway, they got away with it, even though my brother got teeth missing, a twisted wrist, and 2 broken ribs. He stayed in the hospital for 3 days. The next day, when I went to check on him, he had overdosed and I still haven't been able to finish his letter. He was 19. And basically, I never got over it. I still cry myself to sleep some nights when I'm alone, even more than 30 years later. And my son looks so much like him. I swear, sometimes I wonder if he isn't reincarnated or something. And everything that I told you, I haven't been able to tell anyone. Not my wife, not my kids, not my gay son. They know my brother died and that I don't talk to my parents, but not what exactly happened to him, and that I disowned my parents because they were relieved they wouldn't have to hide their gay son anymore. And I do not know how to tell them. It's already hard enough to type this with very few details to strangers on the internet. I don't think I will be able to tell the ones I love, especially if they ask for details. I'm broken. I know that, but I don't know what to do. I know my son deserves an explanation, but every time I see him, I want to cry. He must think I hate him, and that breaks me even more. But I just don't know how to say it without breaking down completely. What should I do?
I couldn't take it anymore, and I did what I had to do. I apologize later. When I was 18, fresh out of HS many years ago, my dad got me into the union. We worked together every day. We didn't have a great relationship to begin with, but the money was good, and I had nothing else going on at the time, so I made the best of the situation. My dad is a big Eric Clapton fan. I dig his early stuff like Cream and Blind Faith, but my dad loves all his work. My dad went out and bought a cassette tape of Slow Hand. My dad played that damn thing every day, at least twice a day. And he didn't just listen to it. He sang along. There was some air guitar thrown in and some steering wheel drumming as well. The album started with the song The Core, and every time it came on, he'd get all excited, like we hadn't listened to it 24 fucking times that week already. It was a completely intolerable situation, but I was trapped. What could I do? Well, one day around lunchtime, we stopped at a bodega in the Bronx for lunch. We pulled up in front of the place, and my dad went in to get some food. I sat in the front passenger seat, staring at that cassette tape, knowing when he came out, he'd put it back on because he hadn't played it since 9 a.m. I turned my head away in disgust, and there was the solution to my problem. A garbage can, right next to my passenger door. I didn't hesitate. I tossed the tape right in. Sure enough, right after lunch, my dad had to listen to Cocaine, but he couldn't find it. He had me tear that car apart. Inwardly, I laughed as I feigned ignorance as to its whereabouts. I don't know, Dad, I lied as I dug through the glove box. Last time I saw it, you were holding it. I finally told him about 20 years later. While sorry for my actions, I still hate that fucking album. AITA for refusing to help my wife have disciplinary action taken against a boy who kissed my daughter at camp. Yesterday, my wife and I picked up our 11-year-old daughter from day camp, and she was crying and visibly shaken. We asked her what happened, and she told us that a boy at her camp kissed her. At first, I was furious, thinking it was an inappropriate and unprovoked situation. After we calmed down and asked more questions, we got the full story. Apparently, while they were waiting to be picked up, she and this boy were joking around, playfully teasing and name-calling like kids do. At one point, the boy said something like, "Stop playing before I kiss you," and my daughter replied, "Do it." He kissed her, and she immediately got upset and started crying. She said she didn't think he'd actually follow through and felt uncomfortable afterward. My wife was extremely upset and immediately began preparing to meet with the camp director and the boy's parents to discuss consequences for him. She described the boy's actions as intentional and inappropriate, and she took steps to initiate formal action. I refused to go along with that approach. I explained that both kids were involved in the interaction and neither showed a clear understanding of boundaries. They're 11. That doesn't excuse it, but it changes how it should be addressed. Instead of escalating the situation, I chose to speak with our daughter privately. We talked about consent, boundaries, and how even joking around can lead to real moments that feel upsetting. She felt heard and supported, and I reassured her that her emotions were valid. I also directed my concern toward the camp. 2 11-year-olds should not have been left unsupervised during pickup time long enough for this to happen. I've decided to bring this up with the camp staff directly and press them to improve their supervision protocols. My wife accused me of downplaying the situation and failing to stand up for our daughter. But I don't believe it helps anyone to confront another set of parents over a situation that involved 2 kids testing boundaries in an unmonitored space. I took deliberate action to handle things calmly and through education, rather than escalation. TLDR, my 11-year-old daughter was kissed by a boy at camp after she jokingly said, "Do it," in response to teasing. She got upset and cried. My wife wants to involve the camp and the boy's parents. I refuse to escalate it, believing both kids need guidance, and that the real problem is the camp's lack of supervision. AITA.